I understand one of the solutions to massive pretrial publicity is a change of venue. There are two cases I want to cite to the court, both of the United States Supreme Court cases. Murphy versus Florida, and the cited, it's Shepard versus Maxwell. There are two kinds of pretrial publicity that would indicate a continuance and or a change of venue required. Prejudice is presumed from pretrial publicity when pretrial publicity is sufficiently prejudicial and inflammatory, and the prejudicial pretrial publicity saturates the community where the trials are held. They found presumed pretrial publicity in a case much less renowned, much less publicized than this one. And Your Honor, to try this case in less than a year after the verdict came in the other case, don't we need to let it calm down a little bit? Where are you going to get a jury? Mars? I mean, there's nowhere in this case.
Allendale, Orangeburg, Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton.
I appreciate your sense of humor.
It's not a sense of humor. We have many counties where these indictments were issued. I am not presuming that a jury cannot be impaneled. Just as the trial that took place on Colleton County, there was no motion to change venue. And I'm not presuming any prejudice, and the test is not based on speculation. The test is whether or not a jury can be impaneled. You first have to attempt to get a jury according to the law.
What I'm saying is, I think it'd be an exercise in futility. I know this. We've been interviewing jurors, as you know, in the murder trial. There was a juror who on that jury who could have been excused, been on the jury panel within the previous year, and told other jurors, I want on this trial, and that, I'm afraid, is what happened on that jury. We got a motion for a new trial after discovered evidence. The Attorney General is going to file their response tomorrow. We believe the Court of Appeals will order a hearing before a circuit court judge to determine whether or not the corporate court tampered with that jury. And that is and so we would go forward with another trial while that matter is pending, while that matter is being litigated?
Probably not in Colleton County.
Well, Your Honor, the idea that somehow something happens in Colleton County doesn't affect what happens in Beaufort County. I mean, this is a national case. I mean, do they not have television now in Dale County?
I don't know.
Do they not have the internet?
I don't know.
So what's the hurry? That's the other point. What is the hurry? He's pleading in federal court next Thursday. Every allegation the state has made, the victims will have their day in court. We plead, Mr. Murdaugh indicated he pleads guilty to the state charges, but the state insists on doing them in serial so they get 3 convictions so they get life without parole. A guy who's already serving 2 life sentences without parole. This is just another attempt to get more publicity, to make this another national case. And, Your Honor, I'm offended that the Attorney General he's got many other cases that are much older than this, but granted, Court TV won't be there for them. This is another effort at creating a national spectacle. Now, Your Honor has some things to say about Mr. Murdaugh at his sentencing. You obviously believe he's guilty of that. You obviously, and the jury found him guilty of that. But I would ask you to put those feelings aside and give us a chance to litigate this jury tampering issue, to allow Mr. Grieved and I to have time, if there is going to be a trial on these, prepare for those trials, which we won't in our calendar for the fall. And third thing is, why doesn't the Attorney General put some distance between the conviction in the murder case and the trial, if there has to be a trial, on the financial cases?
What if I told you that one of the most trusted lawyers in South Carolina spent decades stealing from the people who needed him most, and he did it with a smile, a handshake, and the full weight of a family name that opened every door? What if the most dangerous part wasn't the crime itself, but how comfortable he was committing it? What if I told you that the real horror wasn't captured in a single moment of violence, but in thousands of quiet transactions, forged signatures, and calculated lies spread across 20 years? This is the story of Alex Murdaugh's financial crimes. Not the murders that dominated headlines. Not the courtroom theatrics that captivated millions. But the slow, methodical theft that happened in plain sight, hidden behind politeness, professionalism, and a last name that meant something in the South Carolina Lowcountry. Because while the world watched a murder trial unfold with shock and fascination, the real horror was already written in the numbers, buried in bank statements, coded in fake invoices, and etched into the broken lives of people who trusted the wrong man at the worst possible time. And those numbers told a story about a man who didn't steal because he was desperate, who didn't take money because he needed it to survive. He stole because he could, because he was comfortable, because for decades, no one dared to question him. Before we go further into the darkness, before we pull back the curtain on one of the most calculated financial crimes in recent history, if you're drawn to cases that go beyond the headlines, cases that expose the psychology behind the crime and the systems that let it happen, cases that make you question everything you thought you knew about trust and authority, then you need to subscribe to Dark Trail Files. We don't just report true crime. We dissect it. We find the uncomfortable truths that other channels skip over. We ask the questions that linger after the verdict is read and the cameras turn off. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, because the stories we cover don't just shock you, they change how you see trust, authority, and the people who abuse both. Now, let's step into the trail. And I warn you, this one goes deep. Alex Murdaugh didn't become a thief overnight. He didn't wake up one morning and decide to steal. He inherited the infrastructure for it, the tools, the access, the credibility, and most importantly, the assumption that he would never need to be questioned. For over a century, the Murdaugh name in Hampton County, South Carolina, wasn't just recognized. It wasn't just respected. It was revered. It carried weight that most people spend lifetimes trying to build. His great-grandfather, grandfather, and father had all served as solicitors, the chief prosecutors for the region, wielding power over criminal cases, over justice itself. For 87 consecutive years, a Murdaugh held that position. That's not a career. That's not even a legacy. That's a dynasty. That's generational power that shapes how an entire community thinks, speaks, and behaves. When Alec joined the family law firm, Peters Murdaugh Parker Eltroth and Dietrich, known locally as PMPD, he wasn't starting from scratch like most young attorneys. He wasn't building a reputation. He was stepping into a legacy that had already been constructed, brick by brick, case by case, decade by decade. Clients didn't vet him. They didn't question his credentials. They didn't ask for references. They trusted him on arrival. His name was the credibility. His voice was the authority. His presence was the proof. And that's where it started. Because trust, when it's inherited rather than earned, doesn't require verification. It doesn't demand proof. It just requires presence. You show up, you carry the name, and doors open. Questions disappear. Doubt evaporates. Alex Murdaugh became a personal injury lawyer, representing people in their most vulnerable moments. Car accidents that left families shattered. Workplace injuries that destroyed livelihoods. Wrongful deaths that left children without parents and parents without children. These weren't corporations he was dealing with. These weren't billion-dollar entities with legal teams and accountants. These were families in crisis, people in pain, individuals who had no idea how the legal system worked, who were overwhelmed by medical bills and insurance forms and grief. And they trusted him to guide them through it, to fight for them, to protect them when they couldn't protect themselves. But here's the thing about trust. It's not a shield. It's a doorway. And Alec walked through it, again and again, with the confidence of someone who knew no one was watching. No one was checking. No one would dare question a Murdaugh. And the people who worked closest to him, who saw him operate day after day, who watched him interact with clients and handle settlements, they saw exactly how he did it. One of them would later stand in front of a jury and describe, under oath, the methods he used to take what wasn't his.
Moving into the latter part of 2020, Did you have any particular issue arise with a disbursement to Forge that caught your attention?
I did.
Tell me about that if you would, please.
I was currently working from home. I had surgery on Halloween of 2020, and I was working from home, hadn't come back yet. I was planned to come back to the office the following Monday, and on that day, I believe it was December 15th of 2020, I got a phone call from the accounts payable department. Nicole called me, and she's one of the ladies that cuts the checks and works for Jeannie Seckinger, and she told me that she had just got a disbursement sheet over, that Christy had sent over a disbursement sheet in one of my files. It made no sense. She didn't understand it, and I was confused too, because I was like, why didn't he contact me to do my disbursement? Because I'm kind of protective over my files. If I've worked that file the whole time, I want to finish that file. I want to work the whole process of it. And actually, the disbursement part is my favorite part of the file, because I want to be able to have that, be there when that client gets their money and gets that closure that they deserve. So I thought it was very odd that Christy was drafting a disbursement in one of my files, and
This was the day you were off work.
that's correct. I was working from home, and I still could have been reached, but I wasn't until Nicole reached out to me and told me.
Keep going.
She told me, so I looked, she sends it to me by email or text, I can't remember, and I reviewed it, and it didn't make sense to me either. There was a line on it that said the attorney fees were going, or amount of it was going to Forge, and I didn't understand how that was happening, and I'd never seen him send attorney fees to Forge before, and so I didn't know that that was even a possibility. And so I called the office, and Christy transferred me to Alec, and I spoke to him and asked him about it, and he said, why did Nicole call you? And I said, well, she doesn't know how to write these checks out, because it doesn't make sense to her. She hasn't ever seen a disbursement like this. And he said, I'll take care of it. And so he said, I'll call Nicole, I'll take care of it. And so I remember talking to Nicole later and say, so what did he say? What was the reason behind it? And she said, he said that they can structure their attorney fees, and that's what that check was for.
The thefts weren't dramatic. They weren't the stuff of heist movies. There were no ski masks, no weapons, no getaway cars. They were clerical, quiet, administrative, almost boring in their execution. That's what made them so effective. A settlement would come in from an insurance company. A check would arrive, made out to the client, representing compensation for pain, for suffering, for loss. Alec would tell the client the amount was lower than it actually was. Or he'd say the money needed to be held temporarily for taxes, for liens, for processing fees that didn't actually exist. He'd create fake invoices on official letterhead. He'd write checks to himself from the firm's accounts. He'd forge signatures with the practiced hand of someone who'd done it dozens of times before. And then, casually, routinely, he'd deposit the money into his personal account, sometimes within hours of receiving it. This wasn't a one-time act of desperation, a panicked decision made in a moment of crisis. It was a system, a routine, a professional operation conducted with the same efficiency and attention to detail he used to win cases for legitimate clients. He had a process, and it worked. And it worked because Alec didn't behave like a criminal. He didn't act nervous or evasive. He behaved like a lawyer doing lawyer things. Paperwork, signatures, transfers, fees. To the untrained eye, it all looked legitimate. To the victims, it felt routine. Just another step in a complex legal process they didn't fully understand. That's the skill, not the theft itself. The presentation, the performance, the ability to make crime look like procedure. Over the years, the amounts grew. What started as tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands, then millions. And still, no one questioned it. Because why would they? He was Alex Murdaugh. His family had served justice in that community for nearly a century. He was one of them. He was supposed to be the good guy. But even the most careful systems have cracks. Even the most polished performances eventually slip. And in 2019, someone inside the firm started asking questions. Not loud questions. Not accusations. Not confrontations. Just questions. Simple questions about numbers that didn't quite add up. The kind that don't go away when you ignore them. The kind that quietly multiply in the dark. And for the first time in decades, for the first time in his entire career, Alex Murdaugh's explanations weren't enough. Her name was Jean Seckinger, and she served as the chief financial officer at PMPED. She wasn't looking for scandal. She was on a crusade. She was simply doing her job. And in September 2019, while reviewing the firm's finances, she noticed something off. Fees were missing. Money that should have been in certain accounts wasn't there. When she asked Alex about it, he had answers. Smooth ones, casual ones, delivered with the confidence of someone who'd answered questions like this before. But they didn't quite add up. The numbers didn't match the explanations. Years later, sitting in front of a jury with the weight of what she discovered heavy on her shoulders, she would describe the moment she realized something was very, very wrong.
Once the murders happened, it didn't seem right to be raising those issues with the defendant then, did it?
No, it didn't.
Don't need the witness.
After the murders happened, did it seem right to you to raise those issues to the defendant?
No, as I stated earlier, we were concerned about the welfare of Alec and the feelings of himself. He was not at work, and we were trying to make sure that he was emotionally okay and able to deal with things before we pressured him about anything.
And then just a few weeks later, and still just in July, he's still in shock from all of these murders?
Yes,
And did ultimately you get an email from Chris Wilson?
I did on July 19th.
And what did that email say?
Chris said that he had the money in the trust available to us.
He's got the money, so no big deal, correct?
Correct?
Did you still, though, in the back of your mind, have some suspicions going back for a while?
I had suspicions that I didn't really believe that because I'd yet to see the ledger or the proof, and it seemed like there was no reason not to send that to me if something wasn't going on.
When ultimately you turned back to these issues and that Chris Wilson check was found, did that result in the uncovering of all of this?
It did.
Did that result in him losing his job at the law firm?
It did.
Where his family name had been a fixture there for decades.
Correct.
Did that result in him losing his license to practice law?
It did.
And the defense asked you that. Did that result in him facing a ton of criminal charges based on all of that?
Yes.
All of that was on the cusp of being uncovered, was it not?
Yes.
Was that on the cusp of being uncovered?
Yes.
Question been answered. Any further exam?
Very briefly, Ms. Seckinger, the finding the Chris Wilson check was coincidental to your work on the forge account research, correct?
Yes, but as we uncovered the forge, we knew we had a problem.
I understand. And it was the forge issue that led to all of this.
It had eventually been the issue if we'd requested Chris Wilson. Regrettably, that we did not in July, we would not have received the money because the money was not in there. We found that out later.
Well, we'll find out about that. But the Chris Wilson issue is a one-off compared to all these other transactions that you brought here today, right?
That's right.
All right, thank you.
You may step down.
Thank you.
She didn't confront him aggressively. She didn't make a scene. She just kept following the paper trail, kept asking quiet questions, kept comparing records. And the deeper she looked, the worse it got. Checks that didn't match the ledger. Fees that vanished into accounts that shouldn't exist. Clients who should have received substantial settlements, but somehow walked away with nothing or with amounts far below what they were owed. The web was enormous, and it was old. This wasn't a recent mistake. This was systematic. This went back years, maybe decades. But before the firm could act, before they could confront him with the full evidence, before they could notify authorities or clients, the Murdaugh family was struck by unimaginable tragedy. In June 2021, Alex's wife Maggie and his youngest son Paul were shot and killed at the family's hunting property. The murders were brutal, shocking, and they consumed everything. Media attention exploded. Investigators swarmed the property. The entire community reeled from the violence. And the financial questions, the discrepancies Gene had been quietly tracking, they were shelved. Grief and shock took over. How could anyone worry about missing money when a family had just been destroyed? Alec played the role of the grieving husband and father with the same skill he'd used in courtrooms for decades. He gave interviews. He appeared at vigils. He looked broken, devastated, lost. And for a while, the scrutiny stopped. People felt sorry for him. The questions about money seemed petty, insensitive, inappropriate in the face of such loss. But the numbers didn't lie. Numbers never do. And the people who had been asking questions, the people who had seen the discrepancies, they didn't forget. They waited. They continued investigating quietly. And by September 2021, 3 months after the murders, the firm had enough evidence to act. They confronted him directly, not with suspicions, not with theories, with proof. Bank records, forged documents, fake accounts. The missing money wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a clerical error. It wasn't a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with an explanation. It was theft. Systematic, deliberate, sustained theft. Millions of dollars. Taken over years. Hidden behind false invoices and forged signatures and lies told to vulnerable people. And they had the records to prove every single transaction. Alex Murdaugh was forced out of PMPED, fired from the firm his family had helped build. But even then, even with the evidence overwhelming, even with his career collapsing, he tried to control the narrative. He tried to shift the story. The very next day after being confronted by the firm, he called 911. He claimed he'd been shot in the head during a roadside attack. Someone had pulled up beside him on a rural road and opened fire, he said. It made headlines immediately. Poor Alex Murdaugh, the man who lost his wife and son, the man whose family was being destroyed piece by piece, now targeted by mysterious attackers yet again. Except it wasn't true. None of it was true. The truth came out soon after, and it was stranger and sadder than anyone expected. Even his own family struggled to keep the story straight.
Can you describe for the jury Alex's condition, like physical condition in the car?
Yes, sir. So when I met Randy over in Savannah, he had Alec, and I got in the car or Randy's truck with him. I'd never seen anything like it. I've seen television shows of talking about the leg twitching and the squirminess, if you will, and that's the first thing. I mean, you could just tell he was sweating. He was thrashing about. Jim,
Did he turn
I don't know how much detail you want me to go into.
Well, did he turn around on the seat of the car? What was he doing?
Yeah, so maybe halfway there, at one point, he had taken his seatbelt off and he had his head down where your fanny would be in the seat and is trying to stretch his legs and just kind of steady, just like thrashing them and kicking them. It's just, again, I've seen TV, but I've never seen something like this in real life.
And was he able to control himself?
No, sir. I said about detail. So he messed himself. He had diarrhea. He just couldn't control it.
And then...
and I say diarrhea, I'm not talking about at a restroom. I'm talking about in the car, in his pants.
Alec had arranged the shooting himself. He had hired a man named Curtis Smith to shoot him on that rural road, so his surviving son could collect a $10 million life insurance payout. The plan failed. The bullet grazed his head instead of killing him. And when investigators dug deeper into the incident, when they started pulling phone records and financial transactions, the entire scheme collapsed like wet paper. But that wasn't the story. The fake roadside shooting wasn't the headline that mattered. Because what investigators found while unraveling that scheme was so much worse. They found bank records showing years of theft. They found forged documents bearing the signatures of dead clients. They found fake bank accounts created in the names of people who had no idea they existed. They found checks written to Alex Murdaugh for settlements that were supposed to go to grieving families. They found a trail of financial devastation stretching back years, maybe decades, touching dozens of victims. And once that door opened, once the first few victims realized what had happened to them, others came forward, one after another, each one with the same story. They had trusted Alec. He had represented them. He had promised to take care of them. And then he had stolen from them while smiling to their faces. But here's the question no one could answer at first. The question that investigators and journalists and the public all struggled with. Where did all the money go? Because Alex Murdaugh stole millions. Nearly $9 million by conservative estimates. And somehow, impossibly, he still ended up broke. His accounts were empty. His debts were massive. So where did it all go? When Alec was finally arrested and charged with financial crimes, when the evidence became public and the scope of his theft was revealed, his defense strategy was immediate and carefully crafted. Addiction, opioids, painkillers. He claimed he'd been spending tens of thousands of dollars per week on pills, that his addiction had spiraled out of control, that the drugs had clouded his judgment and impaired his decision-making. He wasn't a criminal, his lawyers suggested. He was a sick man who needed help, not punishment. But when questioned under oath about his drug use, when prosecutors pressed him for details about how the addiction affected his behavior, his explanation took a very strange turn.
If I took 30, if I had 30 milligram pills, you figure 100 pills would be 3,000 milligrams.
100?
100.
So you're taking 60 a day or something like that?
There were days where I took more than that. There were days I took less than that.
And how would you take them during the course of the day? I mean, how many are you taking at one time? How frequent in this time period, let's say January to June?
You know, there's a point in time, and I'm not sure when it was, I think it was well before that, where, and you have to understand this. This is something that I can still remember the first time I ever took an OxyContin.
Murdaugh, can I ask you to answer my question, and we'll let you explain all you want. And my question was, how many were you taking a day during this time from January to June? Answer that first, please, and if you want to explain, I'm happy to let you do so.
I'm not positive, and here's why. It's because over the years, like as I was saying, the first OxyContin, one OxyContin made me sick. And that was when I was transitioning from hydrocodone to oxycodone. And it made me sick because it was a really strong one. And so, you know, one OxyContin pill was like 10 hydrocodone pills. So, but anyway, as I took more and more, and over the years, it just, you know, you build up a tolerance to pain pills. And so what might give me this energy, one of the reasons I became so addicted is, you know, some people talk about pain pills and how they make them lethargic and, you know, where they can't do anything and they feel. Opiates gave me energy. I mean, whatever I was doing, it made it more interesting. You know, it made me want to do it longer. You know, to go on a drive, it made driving. It just at the beginning, it made everything better.
He didn't describe opioids the way most addicts do. He didn't talk about numbness or escape or relief from pain. He said they gave him energy, that they helped him focus, that they made him more productive, more capable of handling his caseload, that he functioned better on them, not worse. It wasn't the testimony of someone drowning in addiction, someone who had lost control of their life. It was the testimony of someone justifying a choice, explaining a tool, describing a performance enhancer. And even if the addiction was real, even if he was consuming massive amounts of pills every single day, it didn't explain the thefts. Because Alec wasn't stealing in a haze of confusion. He wasn't making desperate, panicked decisions while high. He was stealing with precision, with planning, with attention to detail, creating fake invoices that matched the firm's official templates, forging signatures that looked legitimate to banks, timing deposits to avoid suspicion, opening shell accounts under false names. Those aren't the actions of someone out of control. Those are the actions of someone fully aware, fully present, fully calculating. The addiction wasn't the cause of the crime. It was the excuse that appeared conveniently after he got caught, after the evidence was overwhelming, after denial was no longer an option. Even those closest to him, people who had known him for decades, who considered him family, struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the man the evidence revealed.
First of all, though, just very quickly, you're a lawyer, is that correct?
I am, since 1998.
1998, and describe very quickly your practice for the record.
Actually, since 1995. I've had my own practice since 1998. In the last 15 years, I've done primarily personal injury work, automobile accidents, people that are injured at work, practice type cases, those things.
And where do you normally practice? Where's your home base?
My only office is in Bamberg.
Do a lot of claims work?
That's all I do anymore. For the last 15 years, that's really all I do.
And do you know the defendant?
I do.
And when did you get to know the defendant?
I've known Alex since we were in high school. Bamberg and Hampton. I grew up in Bamberg, and they're only about 30 miles apart. And so I knew of Alex and had been around him some growing up. We had some mutual friends. I was a lot closer to some other guys in Hampton that I grew up playing golf and things like that with, but I would cross paths with Alex. Played on the same baseball team one summer, I think like our senior years in high school or somewhere around high school age. Didn't really keep in touch with him or cross paths with him until we ended up going to law school, and we started law school together at Carolina. 3 years there together at law school and lived together part of the time.
Did y'all become friends?
We did.
Become close friends?
Very close.
Best friends?
He was one of my best friends, yes. And I thought, he was, and I thought he felt the same way about me.
You feel that way now?
I don't know how I feel now, Mr. Waters.
Fair enough.
Chris Wilson, Alec's best friend since college and fellow attorney, took the stand and testified that Alec had borrowed money from him too. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. Alec told him it was for legal fees, for temporary expenses, for cash flow problems that would be resolved soon. Chris believed him without question. Why wouldn't he? They'd been friends for 30 years. They'd built their careers side by side. They trusted each other completely. But the money never came back. It was never repaid. And when Chris finally realized what was happening, when he understood that his friend had been lying to him for years, stealing from him while looking him in the eye and asking about his family, he was devastated. Not just by the financial loss, by the betrayal, by the realization that their entire friendship might have been built on lies. Because Alec hadn't just stolen money from Chris Wilson. He'd stolen trust, history, decades of shared memories. And you can't repay that. There's no check you can write for that kind of damage. But the worst thefts, the ones that revealed the true depths of what Alex Murdaugh was capable of, weren't from friends or colleagues or people who could afford the loss. They were from people who couldn't fight back, people who were grieving, people who were vulnerable, people who were injured or disabled or dead, people who had no idea they were being robbed until it was far, far too late. And the stories of those victims are what truly expose the man behind the lawyer's mask. Gloria Satterfield worked as the Murdaugh family housekeeper for over 20 years. She cleaned their homes. She cooked their meals. She was part of the family in the way that trusted employees sometimes become, woven into the daily fabric of their lives. In February 2018, she died after suffering injuries from a fall at the Murdaugh home. The death was ruled an accident. Tragic but not suspicious. Alex Murdaugh attended her funeral. He comforted her sons. And then he told them he would help them file a wrongful death claim against his own homeowner's insurance policy. He said he wanted to make sure they were taken care of, that Gloria's death wouldn't leave them in financial ruin. He said he wanted to do right by her memory. He told them to trust him. He was a lawyer. He would handle everything. They trusted him. Years later, standing in a courtroom filled with cameras and reporters, one of Gloria's sons would finally get the chance to describe what actually happened to the money that was supposed to honor his mother's life.
Well, we saw just a moment ago a confession of judgment where Alex Murdaugh admitted that he owed you $3 million. Can I get this wrong? Where's the confession? There it is. $4,305,000. Is that right?
That's the judgment, yes.
Okay. But you hired a lawyer, Eric Bland, very fine lawyer, and he actually sued Mr. Murdaugh's firm and some other folks and got you $6.5 million, right?
Yes, or no, not that I'm aware of.
Pardon me?
Not that I'm aware of. The only thing I'm aware of is the judgment.
So Mr. Bland didn't tell you about the $6.5 million?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure history's not repeating itself here. And so you actually recovered $6.5 million, which would be a couple $1 million more than you would have gotten had you received the money that Alex took, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you've been made more than whole for that loss.
Yes.
$2 million more than you would have gotten had he not taken your money, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now, sort of the last question that I think I have for you, but let me check with my co-counsel before. Well, one last question is this. On June 7th, prior to June 7th, prior to June 8th, had you ever threatened Alex Murdaugh with exposure?
All right, could you repeat the question again?
Prior to June 8th, 2021, did you ever threaten Alex Murdaugh saying, I know you stole my money, where's my money? You know, I know you've got the money. Did you threaten him in any way?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
The insurance company paid out a settlement of over $4 million. $4 million meant to compensate Gloria Satterfield's family for their loss. The Satterfield sons never saw a single cent of it. Not $1. Alec took it all. Every penny. He created fake paperwork showing disbursements that never happened. He forged signatures on documents they never saw. He told them the insurance claim was still being processed, that these things take time, that he was working on it. And while they waited, while they trusted, while they grieved their mother, he deposited their money into his personal accounts and spent it. At his sentencing hearing, they were finally given the opportunity to speak directly to the man who had stolen from them, to tell him exactly what his actions had cost them beyond the money.
Your Honor, I do have one request. Do you mind if I face that way?
That'd be fine.
Because when I talk to people, I like facing who I'm talking to. Thank you. I really don't have words. You lied, you cheated, you stole, you betrayed me and my family and everybody else. And you did it at a cost of my mom's death, first of all. A couple Octobers ago, you wrote a half-hearted, I'm sorry letter, which was half-hearted because your actions did not follow through, that you were really sorry. So I'm going to read you. I have an apology. I'm sorry that you feel like you had to betray us, steal from us, cheat us, and lie to us. I'm sorry that your family has to now go through what they're going to have to go through the rest of their life because of your actions, of what you did. I want you to know that I forgive you. I will pray for you every day, that God get the hold of your heart. And you may not know the gospel, so I'm going to share it with you. The gospel is the death, the burial, and resurrection of Jesus. That's how people are able to forgive people and able to do right and able to pray for those who hurt them and do things to them. So my heart is with you. My prayers are with you, and I just wish the best for you.
Gloria worked very hard for you for 20 years, you and your family. She loved Buster and Paul as her own. She loved Maggie, and she trusted and loved you wholeheartedly. She considered you and your family as her own family. To have her loyalty and love and trust betrayed by you is very hard for our family to understand. We just will never understand. And how you were able to profit from her death is especially hard for us to understand and cause unimaginable hurt to our family. The fact that if only you had given Tony and Brian just a very small portion of the money you stole from them, they would have appreciated it and been very happy while thinking that you had kept your word, done your legal duty, and looked out for them and their best interest. Instead, you chose to break the law that you had sworn to uphold, be greedy, and look out for your own best interest. Alec, in time, the wrong you did to so many people may be forgotten, but in hopes that Gloria and her pure heart, full of kindness and love, will not be forgotten, we started the Gloria's Gift Foundation in honor of Gloria and her memory by providing gifts to some needy children during Christmas, so that Gloria will be remembered forever. And my heart goes out not only to my family, but today to hear all these families that you did wrong by, those children that you stole from, everything. They lost a mother, and you stole every dime from them. I just don't understand. Did you not have a soul? I don't get it, Alec. I can't understand it. And I thank God maybe that I don't understand it, because then I might be in the same situation as you. I just don't get it, and I guess I never will get it. So hopefully God will forgive you, because you're going to need forgiveness. I just don't know. I'm lost for words, Alec. You are not the person that I thought I knew. And you come from a good family, but you wasted your life. And I hate you did to family the way you did, because you do come from a good family. And I'm sorry you threw your life away. Thank you, Judge, for allowing me to address.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And thank you for the state for everything y'all did for us to find justice.
That's on behalf of Satterfield.
Thank you.
Their words weren't just about the financial loss, though that was devastating enough. They were about dignity, about trust, about how Alec had attended their mother's funeral, had hugged them, had looked them in the eyes with tears on his face, and then used her death as an opportunity to steal from them. He had turned their grief into profit. He had made their trauma into his payday, and that a violation that goes beyond any dollar amount. And they weren't the only ones. The list of victims kept growing. Hakeem Pinkney was a deaf man killed in a car accident, leaving behind a family struggling to understand their loss. Alec represented them in the wrongful death case. He secured a settlement, and then he kept the money, every dollar of it. He told them there were complications, unexpected liens, legal fees that had consumed most of the settlement. They believed him because they had no reason not to. Jordan Jinks was a teenager paralyzed in a car accident. His life changed forever in an instant. He would need medical care for the rest of his life. Therapy, equipment, medication. Alex Murdaugh was supposed to help him secure his future. Instead, he stole his settlement money that was meant for medical care, for survival, for giving this young man a chance at the best life possible despite his injuries. When Jordan finally got the chance to confront Alec in court, to speak directly to the man who had stolen his future, the emotion in that courtroom was impossible to ignore.
I've been waiting on this day to look in your eyes. I wanted to sit down with you one-on-one when I found out what you did. Just want to know why. I can say, oh, excuse me. Unlike a lot of these people here, these victims, I got a lot of intimate stuff that I can say. You remember all those wildlife hunts I had for law enforcement? Your entire family was a guest of honor. Mr. Buster, Judge Eldroff, insisted on me taking care of them for the day. You don't know how many brownie points you got in my life from just that. I trusted you with everything. I knew I was going to break. I knew it.
Mr. Bland, can you reposition his mic so I can understand?
I knew I was going to break. Excuse me, I knew I was going to break. But I got some notes here I don't even know if I can go through. Our family got a deep relationship, man. You remember making a comment to me after I found out, after we discussed the possible amount this lawsuit was worth, and you made a comment to me, and you said, don't spend all this money foolishly. Tell me what you did with $20 million that you stole. Part of it being mine. And you know, I'm sitting there crying. I want everybody to know, Judge, I need you to know. I'm not crying because of what he stole from me. I'm crying for what he did to everybody in the suit. These kids, these people dying. I didn't want to come up here and bash you, but I gotta ask you, what kind of animal are you? I can't even go over my notes. I'm not here to be your judge. Ultimately, that belongs to the good Lord and Savior. But may He have mercy on your soul. I didn't want to see you. When I saw you on TV in an orange jumpsuit, it hurt me. Still wasn't mad at you. Was this judicial system put together a system to deal with people that make bad choices? And my friend, you chose to make the choice you made. So I need the judge to know that I am full favor. I am in full favor of the court's recommendation for the 27 years. I can go back to us going to mediation. That you affected my wife. You chose to have Maggie deal with us those 2 days we were in Charleston in mediation. She catered to us hand and foot. You told me where to go and check into my room. We did. From that point, we never drove another foot. Neither did you. Maggie drove us everywhere we went. When all this came about, Paul, and Maggie, I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it. But after sitting here today and hearing some of the devious things that you did to people, these victims here, changed my mind, bro. Once again, I ask you, what kind of animal are you? Boy, I gave you my all. I would do the money you stole from me. You could have asked me for it, and I would have gave it to you if that's how I felt about you and your family. You didn't have to steal it from me, man. And I still, if there's any way possible, you set it up for me to be on your visitation list. I want to sit down with you. I want to look you in your eyes and talk to you when I can really talk to you. We got some intimate things we can talk about.
I would like that.
But why, bro? Why? Such a talent. How talented you are? I don't understand. Mr. Harpoonian, nothing to do with you, but you made a comment earlier about the attorneys trying to sell bobbleheads and cups. Can you represent this man to sell those bobbleheads and cups to repay the victims that he stole from? Thank you.
These weren't random thefts. They weren't crimes of opportunity. They were targeted, strategic, carefully selected. Alec didn't steal from people who could fight back. He didn't steal from wealthy clients or corporations with legal departments. He stole from people who were too hurt, too grieving, too overwhelmed to question him. He stole from people who were relying on him completely, who had nowhere else to turn. And he did it with empathy in his voice, with concern on his face, with reassurances that everything was being handled, that they shouldn't worry, that he was taking care of everything. That's what makes it so deeply disturbing. He didn't threaten. He comforted. He didn't demand. He reassured. He looked vulnerable people in the eye and lied to them with the same practiced confidence he used to win cases and convince juries and build his reputation. Even his law partners, the people who had worked beside him for years, who had built the firm alongside him, had to come to terms with what he'd done and what it meant for everyone who had trusted the PMPD name.
When I got out of court, I saw that I'd missed communications from one of my partners, Mark Ball, and I called him, and he said, "We have a problem," and I was like, "What?" And he said, "You have to come now," and I said, "I'm just walking out of court. I need to go home and eat supper, and it's not on my way." And he didn't ever tell me what it was, but he said, "You have to come now." And I could tell the urgency, and so he told me where to meet him, and that would have been in Cummings, South Carolina, at my partner Danny Henderson's place, and which was not on my way home, but he was so insistent that I went there and met. When I got there, Danny and Mark were there waiting on me.
And ultimately, what was your discussion?
I was giving a folder that had paperwork in it, and that paperwork consisted of checks, both front and back, and I was asked to review them.
And were those the what's been called the fake forged checks?
I believe the fake forged checks, there was not all of them that Ms. Seckinger went over, but I believe that there was, I could probably call the names of most of them that were there. I know it was Anderson, Bush, Moore. There was probably about 5 or 6 of them, and I believe they had a copy of the Ferris check there too.
Ferris check?
Yes, and I'd sat for a minute and reviewed it. I think Danny said, "You're going to need a drink." And so...
Did you have a drink?
Yeah, ultimately more than one.
And what happened after that?
Well, they didn't tell me what was in it. They let me review it on my own. And I immediately said, this is bad. And my words then were that we have to terminate Alec. He cannot no longer practice with us. And that was within, I don't know how many minutes, but it was not a long period of time, because the way Jeannie had it laid out, it was clear what had happened and that this money had been stolen.
Did any of the partners go to confront Alec with this information that had been uncovered?
Yes, there was a meeting the following morning at Lee's house. I did not attend. I did not need to attend. I was still getting ready for trial. I had already decided where this was going, and they met, and then we, Danny and Randy, Alec's brother, went and met with Alec.
And what was your understanding of what the defendant said as a result of that?
That he admitted and said that he knew he was going to get caught at some point in time, and admitted to them that he did it.
Ronnie Crosby, another senior partner at PMPD, testified about the firm's discovery of the thefts. He described the shock that rippled through the office when they realized the scale of what had been happening. The disbelief that one of their own, someone they trusted implicitly, could have done this. And the devastating realization that clients they'd represented, people who had come to them for help, had been victimized not by some external criminal, but by someone within their own firm. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was professional. It was institutional. It damaged the firm's reputation in ways that might never fully heal. It shattered client relationships that had been built over decades. And it left a trail of victims who thought they'd been protected by the law, only to discover they'd been robbed by it. In November 2023, Alex Murdaugh stood in federal court and pleaded guilty to 22 federal financial crime charges. Wire fraud, money laundering, bank fraud, conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. The paper trail was undeniable. He had no realistic option for defense. His lawyers had advised him that a trial would only make things worse. So he pleaded guilty. When he addressed the court during his guilty plea, when he was given the opportunity to speak before sentencing, his words were carefully chosen, precisely delivered.
Mr. Murdaugh, you've heard what Mr. Waters has stated. Do you agree with the statements he has made?
Yes, sir.
And do you wish to withdraw your formally entered plea of not guilty and plead guilty to each and every one of these charges?
I do.
You, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated a sentence in this matter that's been recited by Mr. Waters. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And where there's a negotiated sentence, either I will accept the plea, guilty plea, and give you the exact sentence that you, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated, or I will not accept your guilty plea. Do you understand that?
I do, yes, sir.
And would you like for me to accept the guilty plea and impose the negotiated sentence?
Yes, sir, I would.
And because these cases, various counts are venued in various counties, Orangeburg County, Hampton County, Colleton County, Bamberg County, Allendale County, I think that in addition to Beaufort, do you wish to waive venue from those counties to have the case heard here in Beaufort?
I do.
Is there any question in your mind as to whether or not you wish to proceed with this guilty plea?
No, sir, there's no question in my mind.
Do you believe you've had enough time to think about it?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are
a
you
long
set?
time to think about it.
I can imagine. Do you believe that you've had effective representation by Mr. Harpootlian and Mr. Griffin?
Absolutely.
Now, this plea agreement includes a provision providing for a waiver of appeal and waiver of filing any post-conviction relief, as well as ordering restitution. You have reviewed those provisions and are fully informed and agree with those provisions.
I am, yes, sir.
Under the Victim's Bill of Rights, the court must ensure that the Victim's Bill of Rights have been complied with. The state is well aware of that, as well as your lawyers. And the victims have the right to be heard prior to the official imposition of any sentence or the official acceptance of a guilty plea. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And so it's the intent of the court, assuming a factual basis is established by Mr. Waters or Mr. James, that the court will accept this guilty plea contingent upon the victim's Bill of Rights being satisfied. Therefore, any sentencing will take place at a subsequent hearing, which will be on November 28th at 10 o'clock. Do you understand that?
It'll be when, sir?
November 28th.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, Tuesday.
I'm sorry.
I understood it wouldn't be today. Yes, sir. I understand that.
All right. And understanding all that has been stated up to this point, how do you plead?
I plead guilty, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. You can be seated, and we'll hear from Mr. Waters.
He admitted guilt. He acknowledged the harm he'd caused. He apologized to his victims. He said he was filled with regret, that he thought about what he'd done every day, that he wished he could take it all back. But the apologies came only after the evidence left no other option. The remorse appeared only after conviction was inevitable. The tears surfaced only when accountability arrived with handcuffs and prison time. During earlier proceedings, when Prosecutor Creighton Waters had the chance to cross-examine him, to question him about the specifics of each theft, the cracks in his carefully constructed facade became impossible to hide.
It wouldn't be unusual for me to look them in the eye.
While you were doing some fast talking to a teenager, correct?
I certainly was not telling her the truth. I don't know if I was talking fast or slow, but I wasn't telling the truth.
All right. Well, you ultimately convinced her that there was nothing amiss here, right? While you were stealing her money, correct?
I don't know if I convinced her that nothing was amiss or I misled her, but I admit candidly in all of these cases, Mr. Waters, that I took money that was not mine and I shouldn't have done it. I hate the fact that I did it. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm embarrassed for my son. I'm embarrassed for my family. And I don't dispute that I did it. I
understand that. But you understand that we have to ask about these things because we've heard about it in a very academic paperwork manner, but every single one of these, you had to sit down and look somebody in the eye and convince them that you were on their side when you were not, correct? That's what you did in every single one of these.
I mean, every time...
Answer my question, yes or no, and then you can explain. I'll let you explain all day long.
Well, I mean, no, sir, that may or may not be true.
Okay.
And Mr. Waters, just to try to get through this quicker, I admit...
I know you want to get through it quicker, but we're not. So answer the question, please.
What I admit is that I misled them, I did wrong, and that I stole their money. Now, this is something, what's the date on that one?
Waters didn't let him off easy. He didn't accept vague answers or emotional deflections. He walked Alec through every theft methodically, every lie documented, every forged signature examined, every stolen dollar accounted for. And with each question, the same pattern emerged over and over. Alec had explanations for everything, detailed justifications for his actions, but they only appeared after he was caught. For 20 years, while he was actively stealing, there were no explanations, no apologies, no regret, only continued theft. He was given one final chance to speak directly to the people he'd stolen from, the people whose lives he'd damaged, to offer whatever words he thought might matter.
Last thing I want to say, Your Honor, is that I am fully committed to trying to be a better person. I'm going to do as much good as possible and help as many people as I can while I'm incarcerated. I remain fully and wholeheartedly committed to finding a way to somehow make those who love me proud again in some small way. I appreciate each of you talking to me. I appreciate each of you looking at me while I'm talking to you. I can tell that you're listening, and I appreciate it. I'm going to say one more time, I hope you know, I hope you believe that it's heartfelt. And the two things that I hope you take away today are, number one, that I care about you, and number two, that I hate the things that I did, and I am so sorry. And Your Honor, I thank you for letting me address you and for letting me address the victims. Thank you so much.
Sir.
He told them he was sorry. He said he took full responsibility for his actions. He acknowledged their pain and the harm he'd caused. But the words felt rehearsed. They felt calculated. They were delivered with the same measured tone and careful pacing he'd used thousands of times before in courtrooms to convince juries, to sway judges, to win cases. And the victims had to sit there and listen. They had no choice. Knowing the money was gone forever. Knowing their trust had been shattered beyond repair. Knowing that no apology, no matter how sincere it might sound, could undo years of theft and lies. Knowing that he'd had countless opportunities to come clean, to stop, to make things right, and he'd chosen theft every single time. Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to multiple decades in federal prison for his financial crimes. Sentences that run concurrent with the 2 consecutive life sentences he'd already received for the murders of his wife Maggie and son Paul. The total amount stolen is estimated to be approximately $8.7 million. Though some investigators believe the real number could be higher, that there may be additional victims who haven't come forward yet or thefts that remain undiscovered. But the damage wasn't just financial. Money can be measured. Money can be counted. The human cost is something else entirely. Families lost money that was meant for medical care, for education, for survival. They lost the futures they'd been promised when those settlement checks were signed. They lost years wondering why they were struggling financially when they should have been secure. They lost trust in a legal system that was supposed to protect them, that was supposed to ensure justice. And they lost something harder to define, but no less real, the belief that there are good people in the world who will help when you need it most. Here's the part that stays with you long after the courtroom footage ends. Alex Murdaugh didn't steal because he had to. He wasn't facing eviction. His family wasn't starving. His children weren't in danger. He stole because he believed he could, because he believed his name would protect him. His reputation would shield him from questions. His skill at manipulation would smooth over any concerns. His position in the community would make people look away. And for years, for decades, he was right. It worked. Until it didn't. The scariest part of this story isn't that Alex Murdaugh was some kind of monster, some obvious villain who announced his intentions. It's that he was a professional, polite, charming, well-spoken, trusted by thousands of people over a long career. The kind of person you'd hire to protect your family. The kind of person who looked you in the eye and made you feel safe, made you feel like everything was going to be okay. That's the real danger. Not the criminals who look like criminals, who match our mental image of what evil looks like, but the ones who look like help, the ones who sound like authority, the ones who wear expensive suits and speak in measured tones and carry business cards from prestigious firms. Because if Alex Murdaugh taught us anything, it's that trust isn't just given. It shouldn't be. It should be earned, verified, and watched carefully even after it's established. Because the people who steal the most aren't the ones who break windows and grab what they can. They're the ones we invite inside. The ones we ask for help. The ones we never think to question. This is Dark Trail Files. If this story made you question who you trust and why, If it made you think differently about authority and reputation and the systems we rely on, then you understand exactly what we do here. We don't just tell you what happened. We show you why it matters. We show you the patterns that repeat, the warning signs that get ignored, the systems that fail when we need them most. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us as we walk the trails others won't. Because the truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's whispered in a courtroom, buried in paperwork, and hidden behind a smile. Until next time, stay vigilant. This is Dark Trail Files.